welcome back to Sir Clive's Retro Games World. I'm at ZX Spectrum compilation reviews, and this time we're doing something a little bit different. A compilation that was deliberately bad. Firebird's Don't Buy This. Proudly proclaiming to be 5 of the worst games ever, let's see if this is true, or just some reverse psychology marketing. And as always, before we get into the games, let's take a look at the packaging. Okay, here we go with Don't Buy This. As you can see, it's in the standard Firebird Silver Range packaging. We've got a large screenshot, as usual, this time of Fido 2, a typically dreadful looking screenshot. Don't Buy This, 5 of the worst games ever, and the Firebird logo, which is amusingly and disrespectfully upside down, which I think is a really nice touch. On the spine we get Don't Buy This, 48K Spectrum, and the logos of Telecomsoft and Firebird down there. And then we've got a little bit of humorous text at the back, disclaimer about how bad the games are. And the final line is that this could be the end of games as we know them. You have been warned. Okay, so looking on the inside, we get the standard Firebird cassette, which I really like. I've always liked the Firebird lettering for how they write the name and the logo, so it's nice to see that. These are very nostalgic tapes to me. Yeah, I'm a fan of those. The tape has all 5 games on each side of the tape, which is good in that if they don't load, the second side of the tape might, so you get 2 goes at it, but also it's bad in that if you want to get to game 5, it can be a bit of a pain. So I'm not sure whether I like it or don't like it. But yeah, there you go. So it's a single fold out. We have the games, and it just tells you that the games are recorded on both sides of the tape. It gives us the loading instructions, and then we have information about each of the games. I'm not going to go through each of them, but I will just read a little bit of the instructions from Race Ace, which I thought were quite amusing. To increase playability, left is left when the cart goes up, but right when the cart comes down. Left is down when travelling left, and left is up when travelling right. The reverse applies when turning right. The cart will go backwards if you're going the wrong way. Clear? Very good. So yeah, that's it. There's not really much to say. It's your standard Firebird packaging, so we can't really knock them down for that. Hopefully it does say compilation in the corner, and that's about it. That's your lot. As I say, can't really knock it down for being the traditional standard Firebird Silver Range packaging. The screenshot is terrible, but the games are supposed to be terrible, so yeah, it does what it says on the tin. So let's check out those games. Don't Buy This was released on April Fool's Day in 1985 as part of Firebird's £2.50 Silver Range. The Silver Range was unusual for a budget label, as it did receive fairly extensive magazine advertising, including this full-page ad that proudly shows off Don't Buy This as one of the 4 featured titles. There were also a number of high-profile competitions to win the pack, such as this one in CMVG, where 30 copies were available by nominating your list of the 5 worst games. And it was a commercial success, with Telecomsoft even considering a sequel, Don't Buy This Either, but that never came to fruition, and the pack was never released on other systems, making it a unique Spectrum oddity. Race Ace was also unique, in that it's the only title on the compilation that's previously been published. Written by Firebird co-founder Tony Rainbird, it actually saw 2 releases, originally in 1983 as a mail-order offering direct from Rainbird himself, and then later in the same year on his newly formed Microgold label. Microgold was set up as an indie publisher looking to help small-time coders get their games out to wider audiences without the big software houses taking a big cut of the profits. So Tony did, at least early on, have honourable intentions rather than pushing any old crap on the buying public. According to the original inlay, Race Ace is actually based on 100cc kart racing and features a track layout that's similar to 2 of Britain's top specialist karting venues at Rye House and Tilbury. The game's also apparently designed to reflect the closeness and speed of action experienced by kart racers. So despite its comedy inclusion in Don't Buy This, it was originally designed as an attempt at serious simulation. The game can be played at any speed between 1 and 250, however anything below 150 ranges from unplayable to deathly dull, and anything close to the maximum is over before you blink. so a realistic range of 175 to 225 is recommended by me. You can also choose the number of laps, though why anyone would choose more than the minimum of 3 is beyond me. You always start well behind the pack and must stick tight to the corners if you're going to make up ground. With rotational controls that move in full character blocks, this means turns are full right angles, so the simulation aims are well misplaced. But there's some fun at higher speeds as you try and close down your 8 opponents. However, if you happen to touch one of them, or more likely if one of them touches you, then your car stalls and you lose valuable time. This unfortunately kills most of the gameplay, as it's almost impossible to dodge them due to their erratic movement, meaning you're forever overtaking and then finding yourself at the back of the pack again. I also found the bumper car style, steer too far one way and you'll end up going backwards, was counterproductive. When you're stalled, it's hard to tell which direction has been registered, so you can easily lose more time, rendering the race unwinnable. Apparently the aim is not actually to win the race, but just to get to the front of the pack, at which point the computer takes over for a lap of honour, which is odd to say the least. But for 1983, I think Race Ace was probably an acceptable, if rather mundane game. But 40 years on, and it isn't going to keep your interest for too long. But I played for a good 20 to 30 minutes, which is more than most of the rest of this pack, so I'm scoring Race Ace 4 out of 10. Apart from Race Ace, the remaining games on Don't Buy This were real submissions into Firebird by hopeful coders, and of all of the games on the collection, Fido is probably the only one where the author can feel a real sense of grievance with its inclusion. You play as the titular hound, who must protect the garden by keeping the moles at bay. To do this, he must sit down and wag his tail to whack the moles on the head. But all this wagging saps poor Fido's energy, so he'll need to keep returning to his food bowl before he's overcome by exhaustion. For some reason, your progress is denoted by the growing number of S's on the word spectrum, and when you've filled the whole line with S's, then the level will be complete. Level 2 brings additional obstacles. When sat down, Fido is taller than when he's standing, so he also needs to watch out for low-flying birds, and stand to allow them to pass. Level 3 then introduces us to a cat, who keeps knocking items off whatever platform it is that it's sitting on, so you must also avoid those. But the bigger issue I found was the text apparently randomly strewn all over the screen, which I assume is a bug or an issue with the file I downloaded. This clears as characters pass through it, but then returns when you lose a life. So with chunky graphics and clunky collision detection, Fido just feels like a game that needed some love and polish, and it could have been a reasonably good game aimed at younger children. So I feel for the author and the character that the game will always be associated with the very worst of Firebird, and I'm giving Fido 5 out of 10. Apparently, Weasel Willy games were a popular game style for type-ins, but I've never heard of them. The inlay ominously provides a note saying that playing the game is much easier than setting the keys, which is very easy by the way. And from what I can tell, this is a derivative of the snake-type game, where you move your character around a screen attempting to make the requisite number of steps without hitting an obstacle or crossing your own footprints. And despite a little bit of music and some nice presentation on the menu screens, don't get your hopes up. The game is sub-typing standard, as your unanimated bear-like weasel plods a seemingly random number of steps, avoiding the worst drawn trees since your nursery school art class. There's no fun to be had here, and Weasel Willy scores 1 point purely for the non-gameplay presentation. After all my sympathy for the author of Fido, we get Fido 2, Puppy Power, An almost identikit game save for a little tidying up of the presentation and an expansion of the cat mechanic. With the same odd-looking dog who seems slim when stood up and very chubby when sat down, begging the question what the hell does he look like in 3D, the mechanics are exactly the same, apart from the fact that we now have a vertical enemy from level 1. This time, some kind of big-nosed and big-footed creature that I initially thought must be a mole, but it certainly isn't anatomically correct, and Fido can now spit left or right to remove the enemies. Or is that an extra large tongue that he's flicking out? The issue with this enemy, however, is that it drops too quickly, making it impossible for you to get to the other side of the screen without losing a life. The text-based level progress meter has changed to crucifixes, which I assume represent the gravestones for the slain moles, and lives are kind of represented by moles in the top right. If you don't manage to whack a mole before it escapes, a mole will appear in the top, and 5 moles missed will be game over. Level 2 replaces Big Nose with some kind of floating flowers or something. These are at least dropped more randomly, so you don't get trapped on one side of the screen, but the whole spitting mechanic makes the whack-a-mole premise secondary to the shooter, which in turn removes the novelty of the game. I found Fido 2, in turn, both too similar to Fido, but also too different, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was just a revision following some notes when it was originally submitted, rather than an actual deliberate attempt at a sequel. I mean, why would you do a sequel to a game that wasn't going to get published anyway? With a net result of less fun than the first Fido, it feels cynical in its inclusion, even for a compilation like this, so I'm only scoring it 2 points. Wow, things might be looking up with the last game. An okayish rendition of Everyone's a Fruit and Nutcase, or Dawn's de Merletons from the Nutcracker, if you want to be all la-di-da about it, welcomes us to the game, along with a perfectly passable title screen and a not completely dreadful interpretation of a single row one-arm bandit. But my god, the speed, or lack of it, which is a shame, because as far as simple Fruit Machine goes, this is passable. Featuring nudges, holds, and a skill shot gamble, Fruit Machine should have been scooping up an average score. But with its death crawl pace, I can only score it 3 points, and quoting from the inlay, Fruit Machine should be reserved for that part of the day when time is not important, such as 4 AM when you're sleeping. Indeed. So that's Don't Buy This, which ironically, given the name, I actually paid more for my second-hand copy than the original price. But let's have a look at what the magazines thought. For a compilation, there was a surprising abundance of reviews for Don't Buy This, with all 3 Your Spectrum reviewers rating it a miss. Their reviewer Roger Willis still stated that he would certainly buy it, as they may not be great games, but they certainly are fun. CMVG said that it was hard to rate the games, as they are published as being bad, and that this may be the start of a new cult. ZX Computing said they'd gone from the sublime to the ridiculous with the Silver range. Definitely not recommended, unless you want a lesson in how not to write games. Home Computing Weekly had to create a brand new scoring graphic for their Dave review meter, which normally ranges from Comatose Dave to Flipped Dave. For this, they introduced Dead Dave. Sinclair User gave a score of 2 out of 5, but I'm not sure if they actually played the games, as they just regurgitated what was in the inlay. And Sinclair Programs said in their 9% review that the games were fairly amusing for 5 minutes on a review copy, but whatever you do, don't buy this. And finally, Crash devoted a large amount of space for their feature comedy review, giving an overall score of 39.33% recurring. For my review, we already know the scores for the individual games, and whilst I've probably been generous to Race Ace and Fido, the other 3 games brought the average right down to just 3 points per game. The packaging has the uniform Silver Range style in a single dual quarterback case. It had a large screenshot on the front and some nice humour, so scores are slightly above average 6. With 15 points from a £2.50 retail price, that gives a pence per point of 17, which is enough for a gross value score of 8.5. But this highlights another issue with the value for money ratings. My aim is to make this formulaic rather than just a subjective score from me, but as it currently stands, a compilation with 30 games all scoring 1 point each, that would get the same score as a 3-game compilation where all games scored 10 out of 10. So I'm now introducing a new quality tax, where up to 5 points can be removed from the value score based on how many games rate below the midpoint. So basically every game that scores below 5 points. And in this case, 4 of the 5 games scored under 5, so I'm deducting 4 points from the value score, which means Don't Buy This gets a value for money of 4.5. And all of that, mashed together with a little of my secret sauce, gives Don't Buy This an overall score of 39%. Easily the worst compilation we've reviewed, and the first recipient of the ZXCCC Turkey Award. The pack won't feature on the overall chart given the score is lower than the current top 12, but it does appear right at the bottom of the budget chart. Firebird also have the honour of propping up the publishers chart, and given that Firebird only released 1 compilation, so can't improve their score, their position at the very bottom is going to be extremely hard to beat. And now that the torture is over, let's have another quick listen to this episode's featured tune and say thanks to the resources used in making the series. But don't go away, I'll be back in 30 seconds with review number 11 from my Cascade Cassette 50 series, which has got to be a bit of an improvement surely. Welcome back. Also known as Alley Driver, Cars was created by Ben Christie, who, like most others, will have received a crisp tenner for his efforts. It appeared towards the end of the first side of the tape, in 22nd position, so it's likely more than half of the people who bought the pack never even played it. The instructions tell us that we have to travel along an endless alley, keeping the vehicle inside the black wall, using keys 1 and 0 to move left and right. But on playing, we can see that the wall is actually blue and not black, and unusually, we're travelling from top to bottom. We immediately hit a problem. With the alley being randomly generated, we're sometimes spawned right before a wall, with little to no opportunity to avoid it. This could easily have been solved by adding 5 straight blocks at the start of each race, but this only happens occasionally, so we'll play on. The controls do seem quite unresponsive, so I find myself holding the key down to make sure it registers, but that often makes me career off into a wall, or not be able to change my path quickly enough. But it seems that the inclusion of a high score is doing its job, and I'm determined not to end this review until I score at least 100 points. My score's starting to increase now. I think I'm getting the hang of it. Or maybe not. Okay, come on Sinclair, concentrate. Okay, this run's looking good. 100 points, here we come. Damn it! Right, this is going to have to be the last go. If I don't make the 100, I'm going to accept defeat. It is strangely addictive though. Terrible graphics, only a third of the screen used, No variation, very little sound, but I'm still having what could be construed as fun. Well, I'm certain I'm past the 100-point mark now, but this could go on forever. And of course, the commentator's curse. As soon as I say it, I die. But 535 points, that's a good benchmark if anyone wants to try and beat me. So just like half of the Cassette 50 games I've reviewed so far, Alley Driver is fun while playing, but I have absolutely no desire to ever load it up again. And to reiterate my standard disclaimer that any game scoring 5 out of 10 or from this compilation would be exceptional, this game gets 2.